She was more than just a queen. Cleopatra was a legend. A woman whose beauty and cunning reshaped the ancient world, standing at the crossroads of love and power. From her daring alliances with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, to her tragic, self-written finale, Cleopatra's story is one of ambition, passion, and resilience. But how did this enigmatic ruler outwit mighty empires, and what truly led to her ultimate downfall? Join me as we uncover the untold secrets of Cleopatra, the queen who defied the odds and immortalized herself in history. The sun beat down fiercely on the ancient streets of Alexandria as Cleopatra VII stood atop the grand balcony of the royal palace, gazing out over the sprawling city that was hers to rule. The scent of salt from the Mediterranean mingled with the fragrance of jasmine flowers in the air, but her thoughts were far from these calming scents. The future of Egypt rested on her shoulders, and her reign was far from assured. Cleopatra had not always been the poised, powerful queen who now commanded the loyalty of her people. In her youth, she had been just another royal, a mere daughter in the palace, with nothing more than a brilliant mind to offer. Her father, Ptolemy XII, was a weak king, often dismissed by his court and the people, but it was Cleopatra's intelligence and ambition that made her stand apart. When her father died, leaving behind a kingdom divided and on the brink of collapse, Cleopatra had been thrust into power at the young age of 18, sharing the throne with her younger brother Ptolemy XIII. Their reign, however, was not one of harmony. Cleopatra quickly realized the magnitude of the political intrigue and backstabbing that plagued the royal court, and she was forced to navigate a sea of corruption and betrayal that threatened to engulf her. Cleopatra's first challenge came from within. Her brother's regents, wary of Cleopatra's growing influence, had him turn against her. They ordered her exile, and Cleopatra was forced to flee the palace. But Cleopatra was not the kind to simply bow to adversity. Instead, she plotted her return with a fierce resolve, and a plan that would change the course of Egypt's future forever. She knew that only one man held the power to restore her to the throne, Julius Caesar, the mighty Roman general whose influence had spread across the known world. But how could a woman like Cleopatra, a mere queen of Egypt, win the favor of such a powerful man? The answer was simple. She would seduce him. Cleopatra's journey to Rome was one of great risk. She was not the first Egyptian ruler to seek an alliance with the Romans, but Cleopatra knew she had to stand out. To catch Caesar's eye, she needed more than just beauty, she needed to intrigue him, to captivate him. Her arrival in Rome was nothing short of spectacular. With her entourage of royal servants and advisors, Cleopatra made her way to the Senate, where she met Caesar. His first impression of her was not one of admiration, but curiosity. The young queen, a woman from the ancient land of Egypt, exuded a sense of mystery that intrigued the seasoned Roman leader. Their first meeting was a political affair, full of formalities and strategies. But behind the measured words and diplomatic gestures, there was a spark. Cleopatra, in her gold-embroidered robes, spoke of alliances, of mutual interests, of Egypt's strategic position in the ancient world. But as they conversed, Caesar's gaze lingered on her, noticing not just her mind but the sharp wit and strength in her eyes. Over the days that followed, Cleopatra made herself indispensable to Caesar. She was well versed in the politics of Rome and presented herself as a powerful ally. Her beauty, grace, and wisdom captivated him, but it was her daring and ambitious nature that truly drew him in. Cleopatra, for the first time in her life, understood that power could be gained through the art of seduction. She did not just allure Caesar with her physical beauty, she enticed him with her intellect, her charm, and her undeniable confidence. It wasn't long before Caesar invited Cleopatra to his villa, away from the prying eyes of Roman society. In the quiet seclusion, the bond between them grew deeper. The lines between politics and passion blurred as their affair blossomed into something far more complex. Cleopatra was no fool. She knew she was not just a lover, but a player in a much larger game. With Caesar's support, she could secure her throne and ensure the survival of Egypt. But there was something more, something neither of them could deny. They were both rulers, both powerful in their own right. Their love affair was not just political, it was a collision of two mighty forces, two empires coming together in a blaze of passion. The Roman Senate was not pleased. Caesar's affair with Cleopatra was viewed as a scandalous affront to Roman values. To make matters worse, Cleopatra's son, Caesarion, was soon born, and whispers began to circulate that the child was Caesar's heir. The political elites of Rome, already wary of Caesar's growing power, saw the union as a threat to the traditional Roman way of life. But Caesar was unbothered. His connection with Cleopatra deepened, and he began to see her not just as a lover, but as a partner in the truest sense. Cleopatra, too, understood that this relationship could shift the balance of power, not just in Rome, but across the Mediterranean world. As the whispers grew louder, Cleopatra began to realize just how dangerous her position was. The alliance with Caesar might have secured her throne for the moment, but it also painted a target on her back. Political enemies in both Rome and Egypt began to conspire against her, waiting for the moment when Caesar would falter. The stakes were high, but Cleopatra had never been one to back down from a challenge. She had a kingdom to save, and no one, not even Caesar, could be allowed to stand in her way. When Cleopatra heard the news of Julius Caesar's assassination, she was not only shaken but also left uncertain about her future. She had not expected her great protector to fall so suddenly. The loss of Caesar was felt deeply, but Cleopatra was no stranger to navigating chaos. Her reign had already been marked by deceit and treachery, and she understood that power, much like the Nile, flowed in unpredictable ways. But Cleopatra knew she could not allow herself to dwell in grief. Egypt needed her, and the eyes of the Roman world were now upon her. With Caesar gone, she had to form a new alliance, and there was only one man capable of protecting her kingdom and challenging her rivals, Mark Antony. Antony was a seasoned general, powerful, and full of ambition. His striking presence and military prowess had earned him the respect of both the Roman Senate and the people. But beyond his war campaigns, Antony was known for his charisma and his capacity to charm, and Cleopatra knew that she would have to use every ounce of her own intelligence, beauty, and wit to capture his attention. Their first meeting was not in the lush gardens of Alexandria, but in a lavish Roman villa. Antony had heard of Cleopatra's beauty and her intellect, but he was skeptical of the Egyptian queen. He had already tasted the thrill of political power, and another foreign queen seemed like nothing more than another player in a world full of ambition. However, Cleopatra had a way of captivating men, and Antony was no exception. Dressed in the finest linens and surrounded by treasures of Egypt, she met Antony with the grace and poise only a queen could command. But it wasn't just her appearance that swayed him. Cleopatra spoke of alliances, of shared glory, and of how Antony could secure his own legacy by partnering with Egypt. Their conversation was strategic, each one testing the other. But as the hours passed, the lines between politics and something deeper began to blur. The intellectual bond they shared became a passionate connection. Cleopatra had once been the seductress to Caesar, now, she became the same to Antony, a dangerous game of love and power. Antony was fascinated by her, not only because of her beauty, but because of her unyielding ambition and fierce will. She was not just a queen in title, she was a ruler who understood the importance of power and influence. Cleopatra had what Antony wanted, control of the eastern Mediterranean, an empire in its own right, which, when united with Rome, could challenge the world. Cleopatra's ability to influence Antony was clear. And in turn, Antony sought to use Cleopatra to secure his own position in the political landscape of Rome. They were partners in both politics and passion, a dangerous combination that would change the course of history. With Antony now fully under Cleopatra's sway, the two lovers made a formidable team. Together, they launched a series of campaigns, seeking to expand their influence across the Mediterranean. Cleopatra's cunning mind and Antony's military strategies made them a near unbeatable force. They defeated rival factions, and Cleopatra's power was once again solidified in Egypt. However, their union began to stir resentment in Rome. The Senate, already wary of Antony's growing power, saw Cleopatra as a direct threat to Rome's interests. Antony's rivals, led by Octavian, Caesar's heir, were quick to use the affair as a political tool, painting Antony as a traitor to Rome and Cleopatra as an outsider using her charms to manipulate him. The once allied forces of Egypt and Rome were now torn apart by political ambition. Octavian, the future emperor, used every opportunity to undermine Antony's position. He painted Cleopatra as a foreign threat and Antony as a fool for falling under her spell. Rumors swirled that Cleopatra was planning to overthrow Rome, and that Antony had become little more than her puppet. As the political battle escalated, Antony's marriage to Octavian's sister, Octavia, became a point of contention. Though he had married Octavia in a bid to solidify an alliance with Rome, his passion for Cleopatra became the focal point of his life. This divided loyalty would prove to be his undoing. Antony's obsession with Cleopatra and their shared dream of ruling the world together pushed him further from Rome's approval, and war became inevitable. The Battle of Actium, a naval confrontation between the forces of Antony and Cleopatra and those of Octavian, would decide the fate of both lovers and their empire. Cleopatra, ever the strategist, stood beside Antony as they commanded their troops. Their fleet was grand, filled with Egyptian ships, decorated with golden standards, and a show of their unity and strength. But in the face of Octavian's superior tactics, their forces were doomed from the start. As the battle raged on, Cleopatra's fleet was quickly overwhelmed. Antony's forces, who had relied heavily on Cleopatra's influence, began to falter. The battle became chaotic, and when Antony, overcome by the looming defeat, made the decision to retreat, Cleopatra did the unthinkable. She followed him, pulling back from the conflict and leaving their forces behind. This was seen as the ultimate act of betrayal, not only to their troops, but to the hopes of their alliance. The once powerful duo, the rulers of the Mediterranean, had lost everything in that fateful moment. Following the defeat at Actium, Antony and Cleopatra sought refuge in Alexandria, hoping to regroup and salvage what they could. But the walls were closing in. Octavian's forces soon followed them, and there was no hope left. As Octavian marched into Alexandria, Cleopatra and Antony knew their time had come. Cleopatra, ever the strategist, had one final plan. She sent emissaries to Octavian, seeking a peace treaty. But Octavian, seeing no benefit in keeping them alive, rejected her offer. In a last, desperate act, Cleopatra made the decision that would forever cement her legacy. She chose death, not as a coward, but as a queen who refused to live in captivity. With Antony gravely wounded from a self-inflicted wound after hearing false news of Cleopatra's death, he died in her arms, declaring his love for her. Cleopatra, devastated by the loss, chose to follow him. She summoned her most trusted attendants and arranged her final moments in private. With the deadly bite of an asp, Cleopatra ended her life, unwilling to be paraded as a captive by the forces of Rome. Her death marked the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty and the beginning of a new era in Egypt, one that would eventually be absorbed into the Roman Empire. Though Cleopatra's reign ended in tragedy, her legacy lived on. She was remembered as a queen of unmatched intellect, a woman who had defied the odds and fought to the very end for the survival of her kingdom. Her love affairs with Caesar and Antony, scandalous and legendary, have become the stuff of myth. But beyond the scandal, Cleopatra was a ruler who changed the course of history, shaping the politics of her time and leaving a lasting impression on the world. Her life was a testament to the power of love, intellect, and ambition, a queen who used her beauty and her brain to navigate the turbulent waters of politics, to fight for the survival of her people, and to secure a place in history as one of the greatest rulers to ever live.